So this video is all about the finer details and making your embroidery and your stitching nice and neat. An example would be on the pug here. I give you step-by-step directions on how to do this, and you can see that it's nice and neat, and there's this curved sort of detailing which helps to pull all the gaps between the stitching together. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now the first thing is, say this is your snout and you start embroidering before you sew it on, which I do recommend because you can hide all your tails in behind. What you don't want to do is have like one big long sort of stitching there, because it can get snagged and pulled when kids are playing with the toys. So you want to work in and out of the holes provided by your stitches. So this is just an example here of this little mouth, and you can get creative as you want with it. You can make them happy or sad. We're going to pretend there's a nose there just for time's sake. So once you have your outline done, what I recommend doing, and what it says in the pattern, is to weave around or work around or in and out. Basically what you're doing is you're taking your needle and you're working it under your outline and you're whip stitching around. So whip stitch, you just kind of loop around, okay? And then you're going to stick it back through again and go in again. And what this does is just sort of hides the gaps with the loop. You can see here the difference, and plus it gives it a little more depth and dimension. So see how crooked those stitches are? If we work back inside there, come up through the top, and then we're going to weave back around like I was just showing you. Insert, weave it around, and you want to pull it nice and snug. So you're just putting like 2 loops through each loop that you've created with your outline. And I'm just going to show you how much straighter it looks. Alright, we're just going to stick that back through there. See the difference? It's much better. Okay, so that is that. The other thing that's really important when you're sewing things on is to get your stitching so that you're not seeing the lines. Now my chicken head is a little bit worse for wear because my puppy got a hold of him today. So it looks like I'm going to be keeping this chicken. So when you are sewing your eye on, for instance, let's see if we can do it here. One of the ways some people do it is, they just grab any stitch and they stick it up through and sort of go like this. But see how you see the lines? We don't want that. I mean, it's okay. If it doesn't bother you, it's fine. But just if you want a nice, neat finish, this is the way that I do it. Now, everybody does their sewing and stitching differently. This is just my recommendation, just based on my own way of doing things. So, what you want to do, I don't know if we can get this on video here. Let me come around. When you're sewing your eye on, work up through the stitch and sort of have it underneath of where you're sewing them on. The other thing I do, I like to work sometimes up through the V of the stitch instead of working through the whole stitch. It sort of depends. I like to work up through the V on the eyes just to make them pop out a little bit more. And then if I was sewing, say that I was sewing a white snout on this, I would just sew through the whole stitch because it's a part of the body, so it doesn't need to pop out. Okay, so we pull it up like that, and then we're going to try and go under. Poke it down through and back up. And pull it, and you see you don't get quite as much of a stitch showing. So just go under and back up through. And then it's nice and neat like that instead of having those big jagged edges. But like I said, everybody does it differently. This is just how I do it. Work under. And also when you're sewing things on like rolls, like on this pug here, it's really important. And some people might find this tricky, and I've included pictures in the pattern for this guy. But basically, what you want to do when you're adding the roll is you're going to go right down behind the eye or beside the eye, pull up through, and then you're going to grab just one stitch on that roll. Let me see if you can see here. You're going to grab a stitch on the roll, pull it up tight, and then you're going to work back down, and you're trying to hide that stitching as much as possible, but all you're doing is just grabbing one stitch on that roll, and all that one stitch go working the way around will be enough to hold it in place, and then it's hidden. The stitching is hidden in there. Okay, so your toys don't have to be perfect, but these are just a couple of the things that I do just to make them nice and neat.